We're moving on in our series, and a few weeks ago, Kathy says, hey, is this guardrail series about done? And that was her tone of like, are you going to finish this up yet? 35 years, I can read her pretty good, So let me just say that, yes, we're finishing this series this week and next. I was hoping to do it this week, but it's just not going to work. So, and I figured I've been pastoring here for over 19 years, and I figure I got a long way to go yet, so I just keep milking them out, if I'm not done talking about something, we'll just keep finishing until I'm done. Then we'll move on to the next thing, So this morning, before we get into it, I want to look at, as usual, I've had people share their guardrails with me. Today, Jerry and Sharon Oven have shared theirs, so we're going to look at theirs. And I'll just say up front, these are out of order. I think I was going through stuff, and I'll just tell you up front. This is my disclaimer. I've been bear hunting. Understand, I've been not hunting bear. There's a difference. I've been bear hunting, okay? And so I've been doing this stuff in my head and working on this stuff as I'm sitting in the tree stand. And so if this doesn't seem like it makes sense, it made perfect sense out there, okay? So you guys just need to step it up, okay? Just bear with me, okay? I know it's almost unbearable, isn't it? I'll just give you the bear facts, okay? We can keep going on that. Okay, so here, you can't bear this anymore. Here, Jerry and Sharon, their guardrails. The first one is actually the second one, a marriage guardrail. And they made this: no working out of town where we would be separated, no matter the amount of money. And I did their wedding, officiated their wedding. There were no fouls, and so everything was a good, clean wedding. And they actually made this guardrail before they got married. This was a decision that, no matter what, if we have a chance to make some extra money and be out of town and be separated from each other for any period of time, overnight, whatever, we're not going to do that. We don't want to do that. And I thought that's a great guardrail. The next one is for the kids. Their main guardrail is don't separate. If they want freedom, they have to stay together. All three are responsible for each other. And I thought that's great. This is one of those guardrails that they implement now. And while the kids think, man, I can't believe, right, Camille? I don't want to point you out. I can't believe that we have to watch, Claire and Jackson. I can't believe that we got to watch out for each other. When they're older, how many know that they'll appreciate that because as siblings, they'll be closer together and it'll pay dividends in the long run. And then the other one for them is this one. Family guardrail, no social media of any kind. I said, now that is really good. How many, I have a Facebook page and I get on Facebook every now and then, but there's times that it's weeks and weeks before I get back on Facebook. And I've had people message me, hey, can you call me? I need to talk to you. If it's 2 weeks later, I'm sorry, I just message them back, sorry, I didn't get this. I do have a telephone number. So, I think, yeah, that's a good thing. So Jerry and Sharon have made these things a matter of conscience. And understand that making it a matter of conscience is the tricky part. Remember, our definition for guardrail is a personal standard of behavior that becomes a matter of conscience. So they draw the line in the sand. They created a standard of behavior, said, hey, if a job opportunity comes, if work comes up that I can make some extra money going out of town for several days, I'm not going to take it. And for them, that's in cement. For them, that's ironclad. It's etched into the conference to the point that, I don't even need to discuss this, Let's say Sam offers Jerry a job. Let's go to Calumet for something, and make some extra money out of town. Jerry would probably say, no, and I don't even need to discuss this with Sharon. And she's the same way. And it's just great because that's a guardrail. They decided that we need this in place to help us. And you make that decision so personal that when you violate it, if they were to violate that decision, you violate your own personal standard, your conscience lights up and says, warning, you're getting way too close. Man, it's just like you did something. You're moving toward a dangerous area you don't want to go. And you actually feel guilty when you violate your personal standard. The idea being to create some guardrails that keeps us away from disaster, from the edge, from the brink. It keeps us on this side of the guardrail, not on the other. as I said before, especially early on in this series, that our culture tends to bait us. They bait us toward the edge of disaster financially. Buy. So what's a person do? They go out and they buy this and they buy that and they buy this. And then when they're overextended on their finances or underwater when it comes to finances, the culture says, look at you, you're terrible with finances. Look at you, you're terrible with your credit card. You're irresponsible, all that consumer debt, you're a loser. And it's like, wait a minute, I just did what you told me to do. I just bought what you told me to do. And that's what culture does. Culture just tempts you to the edge, and then they push you over. They just want that. And so how do you manage all this? That's never going to change. So we said, what if we establish guardrails? And this message and next week's message is all recapping and finishing this off. But I have some other areas I'm going to get to, too. We did talk about a lot of areas. We talked about finance. We talked about moral guardrails. We talked about friendship. We talked about all that kind of stuff. So this week, as I wrap up today and next week, I want to address what I call the big pushback of all this. Because chances are, if you've been following along in the series, like some of you have, you've been going on one or two tracks. Track number one is, man, this is good stuff. I need to work on this. Track number one is, I really wish that, I hope so-and-so's listening. I'm glad my spouse is hearing this, things you don't verbalize. Or you know what, I may tell so-and-so to watch this on the web or send them a DVD or what, because it's just a lot of this stuff, I don't know if you've noticed, it's just plain common sense, that it makes common sense too, that in order to keep from messing our lives up in any area, you pick the area, I don't care, in any area, we need some guardrails to keep us back from that brink of disaster. Now that's track one. Track two is, I'm not going to do this. Some of you might be thinking, I'm not going to do this. Yeah, Tim, it makes sense, and I can't argue with you, but that's not happening here. I mean, you might do that. Because there's something in you and there's something in me that says, okay, but the problem with the guardrail is it keeps me from something I want. It keeps me from something I really want to do. I don't want to be a good example. I want to spend the money. I don't want to be, prudent and financially sound. I want to be just, do what I want to do. And a guardrail would just really ruin all that. So the problem is, while this makes a lot of sense, it's like, kids, I don't want to study. I want an A, but I don't want to have to study for it, right? I was there, I don't want to have to study for this. I want the A, but I don't want to study for this. And the problem is, Tim, the problem with this guardrail thing, Tim, is the guardrail. It gets in my way. How many know the guardrail, a real guardrail on the road, is put on an area that's safe, right? You could walk on that area. You could drive on that area. You'd be close to the edge, but it's put in a safe place. And so what we like to do is we like to say, Tim, the problem with the guardrail is it's a guardrail. And I want to live on the edge. I want to live on the edge. I want to get as close to sin as I can. That's what we do. That's our human nature. And so some of you might have been saying, that's what I'm going to do. And that's the pushback. That's where we get the pushback. That's why some of you might be walking out of here and you just do what you've always done. You say, yeah, it makes sense. I can't find a flaw in any of this. And again, I hope my friends are listening, and I hope my family's listening. I hope these people are listening because it's good for them, right? But for me, not so much, The problem is when it comes to you and me, this whole idea of stepping away, stepping back, giving some distance between us and danger, I can handle it, right? We think, I know Sam can't handle it, but I can handle it. Debbie, she's got some struggles on this, but I can do it. Kathy, she's, and so that's what we do, right? They need it. Have you ever sat and heard a message and thought, boy, I wish they would hear this? Huh? Maybe God's speaking to you, And that's what we do. You say, if I put a guardrail there, I'm going to be missing out. But I can handle it. I can do this, I'm not going to have as much fun if I put a guardrail in my life. If I put a guardrail there, I'm not going to have as much fun as I could. So I want to walk. Kids, I don't want to talk to the kids. It's so easy. I want to walk as close to sin. Yeah, I know at church they say we shouldn't do this. I know they say that the Bible says this, but I want to do this. And I'm going to tell you what, that's tough. We say, I'm not going to do this. So I'm going to leave some stuff on the table, and I've got some experiences that are unexplored, and I want to explore those experiences. And honestly, Tim, you might be thinking, Tim, this stuff sounds fine, but it's not for me. I'm not going to do it. So if you've already kind of wandered in that direction, I want to point some things out to you that you already know. I'm going to be Mr. Obvious today, okay? And I'm going to point some obvious things out that you know, and then I'm going to tell you a story from the Bible. So here's some things you already know. Forget the guardrail thing. If you decide, forget the guardrail thing, if you decide, it's ridiculous, I'd rather live on the edge, here's the thing that you need to know. Regardless of whether you have guardrails or not, the tension that you feel is not going to go away. Because all of us agree, at least I think most of us agree, that out there somewhere, morally, financially, relationally, there's some lines to be drawn. Out there somewhere, there's some lines that we need to draw. We may not all agree, George and I may not agree on this line, but we agree that lines need to be drawn out there someplace, right? We know that there's things that people shouldn't do. A single person shouldn't do this. A married person shouldn't do that. A student shouldn't do this. And there's lines out there that we know, but here's the problem. Wherever you decide to put the brakes on, and this is important, wherever you decide to put the brakes on in your life, that will be the point of tension you experience. That's where your temptation be. Here, you got your bulletin, you got a place for notes, write this down. Your temptation begins wherever you decide to put the brakes on. That's where your temptation starts. Temptation isn't going to go away. Tension is never going to go away. If you decide, forget this diet thing, I'm going to eat what I want, right? I'm going to eat what I want. I'm just going to eat whatever I want. Well, at some point, you're probably going to go like Jeff said, well, you know what? I'm on the cruise ship. I'm going to eat this stuff on the ship that I want, right? And then later on, at some point, Jeff said, yeah, I shouldn't eat this. What happens? Would it have been much easier at the beginning? I'm sorry, Jeff, I'm picking on you, but it works. Would it have been much easier at the beginning for Jeff to say, you know what? I'm not going to go and glutton and eat all that stuff than to eat it and to be sick later? Are you tracking on this? So it doesn't leave. The tension doesn't leave. The temptation doesn't go away. You just have a new point of tension. And refusing to have guardrails doesn't eliminate the tension. All it does is erode your determination. All it does is bring you to a place of temptation that if you were to give in, the consequences at that point would be a whole lot greater. If I say no up front is one thing, but if I go down the road with this and finally I have to say no, now I've got consequences that are a whole lot bigger than if I would have just said no up front. Stood my ground. The point is this, and this applies everywhere. At some point, you're going to put a foot on the brake, and when you do, there's going to be temptation, and that's where your tension is going to start. But the further you are in on some things, the more complicated the consequences if you say yes, and the more difficult it is to say no. I know. I was a teenager once. I've done other things before and have friends say, come on, hey, let's go, So refusing to have guardrails doesn't solve a thing. It just moves the battle line a little bit closer to disaster. It just gets closer and closer to disaster. Let me put it this way. Your appetites are never fully and finally satisfied. Did you know that? Your appetites are never, in other words, you can never have a meal to end all meals. You can never have dessert to end all desserts. You can never buy a car that is, man, I don't need anything else after this. This baby's it, right? Because you know what's coming out next year? The next model, right? You can never have a kiss to end all kisses. You can never have this to end all this. There is no appetite that you have that is fully and completely and finally satisfied. In fact, you may not know this, but the more you feed an appetite, guess what happens to it? It grows. Did you know that the more you weigh, the hungrier you are? because you feed an appetite and it grows. I have an appetite for guitars. And I like guitars. I played guitar since I was a young kid, and I go and that guitar there saved beer and pop cans for that thing. Took a lot, okay? And I thought, okay, I got this. This is great. And I love that guitar. But there's always another guitar, right? There's always something else. In fact, there's a guitar right now that I would really love to have. It's called a McPherson. It's made by, ever heard of Matthews Bows? Matt McPherson? His family makes the McPherson guitar. Matthew bows are pretty nice bows, right? Anybody? Zeke, what do you shoot? Matthews? Yeah, Matthew. Who shoots a Matthews bow? Only 3 of us. Who shoots any bow? Okay, the rest of you don't know what you're missing, but that's okay. Anyway, so Matthews bows are really nice to have high standards, but the guitars are the same way. They're really good. The problem with the guitar is it starts at $8,000. Do you see the problem? You see, some of you might say, "What's the problem?" but Tim doesn't say, "What's the problem?" My wife says, "What's the problem?" And anyway, so I like, but the problem is, I could go buy a McPherson guitar, and you know what would happen? There'd be another guitar out there. Another guitar out there. I got online once to look up a guitar, and I forget the name, Olson, James Olson guitars, I think it was. It was $42,000. So $8,000 is a piece of cake compared to 42. Honey, see? It's cheap. Anyway, so that's my point, So here's the deal. My dad used to tell us boys, I'm going to tell you once and for all. Anybody ever heard that? I'm going to tell you once and for all. And that means this is it. Listen up. This is final. And that's what this message is about. Once and for all. Listen up good this week and next week. This is it. This is once and for all. Whatever we've been talking about financially, about shopping, about debt, whatever it is, relationship with people you shouldn't spend time with, you just pick the area. The point is this. Every time you feed an appetite, it's never fully and finally completely satisfied. It wants to come back for more, but we have to decide this is it once and for all, because that is never going to change your life. And if that's the case, what does wisdom say? We have to say, what does wisdom say? What does common sense say? Proverbs 27:12. Remember this? The prudent sees danger. This is a guardrail. The prudent sees danger and hides himself, but the simple go in and suffer for it. Some versions might say the wise see danger and hides himself and stays away, but the foolish go in and they suffer for it. So we take that into consideration in all things. Is this wise? Is this foolish? Weigh that out. Now, if you have friends and you wanted them to have guardrails in their lives, if you love somebody, how would you treat them? Would you talk to them? Would you encourage them? Probably. I'd hope so if you're good friends. But the thing is, we don't do that to ourselves. So my question is, if you loved yourself, what would you say to yourself when it comes to guardrails, when it comes to putting things in your life and taking things away? If moving closer and closer and closer to the lines that spell disaster only feeds an appetite, the thing with guardrails is not only do you just draw a different line of temptation along the way and a different line of tension, you draw it far enough back with a guardrail to where the appetite is more manageable. It's easier to take care of. It's easier to handle because appetites are never fully and finally satisfied. They never are. Kathy and I, we've gone shopping places, and she says to me, Tim, there's a music store. You want to go in? No, I don't want to go in. Why? Because then I say, you're giving me the go-ahead to go buy a guitar? Well, no, I just thought you'd want to look. And I say, why do I want to look if I'm not buying a guitar? Does that make sense to anybody? It's like, what in the world do I don't eat? And then so we're downstate one time, and we're driving down the street, and there's a guitar center. You know what I'm talking about. And she said, oh, let's go in there. And I thought, yeah, I want to look at something here for the church. And they have a room that's twice as big as this, maybe. I don't know. And there's guitars all the way up the wall, all the way, and some guitars in a special room with humidity controlled, And And she said, let's go in there. It's like, yeah. I just think she's torturing me, And then she wants me to let me take your picture in front of all these guitars. And I'm going, oh, I can't. It was just like, I can't, And so I got to stay away from that stuff. I know where my guardrail needs to be. I don't want to go in those stores because the temptation, I have a credit card in my pocket, right? And that's temptation, well, it's not $42,000, it's only $2,000. Anyway, so open your Bibles to the book of Daniel, please. Here comes the story. The book of Daniel is in the Old Testament, and while you're turning there, understand my point is this, and in case some of you may be checking out after this, all I'm saying is that if you decide the problem with the guardrail is that it keeps you from good things, keeps you from the right stuff, Daniel chapter 1, keeps you from having fun. Your friends are going to say, man, you're so weird. What happened to you? I thought you liked doing this. I thought you liked to drink. I thought you liked to party. I thought you liked to do this. I thought this, and it keeps your, and all that. I'm saying don't deceive yourself. That's what actually we started this message at. Don't deceive yourself. Don't deceive yourself into thinking that, by saying yes, 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 I'll never have to say no. How many, have you ever been, somebody just nag at you so much that you just say yes? You finally give in? We've done that. Friends do that. Yeah, really. And I can think of times when people have given in and the regret level is just through the roof. I can think of terrible stories of parents, and it's true, of parents who've said yes to the children after saying no, 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 finally give in, and then they wish they wouldn't have. You know what I mean? I can think of terrible stories of people who have said somebody's nagging at them about doing this. Finally, they give in on the personal level. And man, later on, they wish they really wouldn't have. I sure thought I could do this. And you are not Superman. You think that I'm strong enough, I can get out of this anytime. I'm telling you, that trap is a hard trap to get out of. So, we're in Daniel. Stay back from certain things, certain lines. It's easier to in the first place than it is to come back later. Daniel, I want to tell you a story about Daniel. Daniel, 605 BC is where this story happens. I'm just going to kind of paraphrase this first part, verses 1 to 4, and then we'll get into the scripture. 605 BC, and this is confirmed by secular historians that this event happened. So you don't just say, well, it's just the Bible, it's just a story. No. Secular historians have confirmed this event. So these are right, these are true. So it's 605 BC, and there's a king named Nebuchadnezzar. October 1st is when our daughter Jessica's due. So we're going to be grandparents again, right? Really cool. My one big prayer is that their grandchild will never be named Nebuchadnezzar. It's like, could you imagine naming a child Nebuchadnezzar? All their life they'd be, how do you spell that? So anyway, Nebuchadnezzar lived in what we have modern day Iraq today. And in 605 BC, or in the third year of King Jehoiakim's reign, Daniel writes that in their book, and it says, he puts that there so we understand the timeline of when this happened and we can track this. And so this is Jehoiakim was reigning in Judah. Nebuchadnezzar decides to conquer Israel, and specifically the city of Jerusalem. Now, Nebuchadnezzar was really pretty smart when it came to battle, when it came to war, when it came to governing. Some people would say that he wasn't that sharp, but he really was. And when he would take over an ancient city, instead of destroying the entire city and then putting everybody into slavery, he would give his commanders these instructions. Go into the city, arrest and take captive the entire royal family and anybody who was from any nobility, because I want the brightest, I want the best, the smartest, because the royal family, people of nobility, generally were educated more than others. You think back to Moses. Moses went with Pharaoh. He got education while the Hebrews didn't, right? And the royal family was also, they were pampered. So they're generally the best looking. They had the makeup. They had all this. They had all that. The royal family was generally people who have eaten well and had been taken care of and taken care of themselves. And they had servants and all that. So go into the city and take these people captive. the best and the brightest, and bring them back to Babylon, to the capital city in Babylon. Now, so Nebuchadnezzar has this habit of just importing all these perfect people, if you will, and in the world, and they're the smartest and the best, and he brings them to the capital, and he puts them into a training program. And he would slowly, over years, over time, strip away. He would slowly erode their culture. And what he was doing is replacing it with Babylonian culture. He was basically desensitizing them to the Babylonian culture. He was, brainwashing them, if you will, over time. So the capital city of Babylon, back then, because he brought always the best people in, was a great city. I mean, they had people who were intelligent, people who were smart, people who it was like, it was way better than Hollywood, okay? It was even Nobbenway and Rexton and Epophet, and it was even better than up here, right? So he had all these brilliant people there because he would destroy their cities and bring the best people to his cities and his culture and change their worldview, and in some cases export them, let's send them back so they could take Babylonian culture to the world. It was just brilliant. It was just a great way to do that. So in 605 BC, he sends his army to Jerusalem, city of Jerusalem. He conquers it. He goes into the temple, and he basically pretty much destroys the temple. This temple was a temple that Solomon built, okay? It's a beautiful temple, destroys it, takes the things of value, the gold basically, comes back and enriches himself. He puts it into his own treasury and in Babylon. So of all the people that he captured, there's 4 people that we're looking at that he brought with him, very famous people. You've heard of them. The first one is obviously the writer of the book, Daniel, right? You know the other 3? Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, right? Okay. So they were part of that select, bright, intelligent group of Babylon. So he gets these guys with all these other people and begins this training process. The goal of stripping away all their heritage, stripping away their belief system, stripping away everything they have, and creating new Babylonians that, again, are still the brightest and the best in the world. So look at verse 5. It's going to be on the screen here too. The king, that's Nebuchadnezzar, appointed for them a daily ration from the king's choice food and from the wine which he drank. Again, the food and the wine the king eats and drinks is what? The best, right? It's not garbage here. He's eating the best. So they're eating from his table, and appointed that they should be educated 3 years. Understand that for these people coming in, this is like graduate school. This is master's program. You're on your way to your PhD. You're getting this stuff, and we're going to give you a 3-year, all expense paid tuition and food and lodging. You're going to eat food from the king's table for 3 years, and it's great. In other words, the captives who found themselves in this program, I think, etymology, we're probably going, yeah, all right, this is a deal. Man, I thought we were done. I thought we were going to die like our parents, our grandparents. I thought we were going to be put in the salt mines. I thought we were going to be put into hard labor. But now we're going to get education. We're going to get food from the king's table, not just this slave food, not just the beans, right? And we're going to get all this great food. And they were going, yeah, this is great. This is unbelievable. Okay, so that's kind of the way that looks to me. It goes on. It says, and appointed that they should be educated 3 years, at the end of which they were to enter the king's personal service. So after they finished their 3-year program, they'd have this oral exam about what they learned, and the brightest of this group would actually get to work for the king, live in the palace, and this is as good as it could possibly get in this ancient world. But Daniel, who was one of the smart guys, one of the brilliant guys, was so smart that Daniel sees the end game. He sees what's happening. He sees what's coming down the line, and he realized that what was about to happen. And because once they spared his life, they gave him a new set of clothes. They shaved his head. They pierced his ear, and they even gave him a new name. He saw what was coming. In fact, Daniel's name was changed to Belshazzar, which means, may Bel protect his life. Daniel realized what was happening. He realized that slowly, not all at once, not you have to believe this, but slowly, they were going to begin to strip away everything he believed, everything he knew, everything he put his faith in. And one day he would wake up a Babylonian through and through, worshiping Babylonian gods, taking part in Babylonian ceremonies, viewing Marduk and Bel or all the different gods as the God instead of Jehovah God as the God, and having put in his past everything he believed in, grew up with, that was true and that was right, that was godly. And he realized that they were going to be doing this over a very, very long period of time. Just imagine how that erosion gets. He saw compromises happening. They're going to ask me to compromise my values. They're going to have me compromise my belief system. They're going to have me compromise my loyalty. They're going to have me compromise. And Daniel recognizes something that many of us completely miss when it comes to the ebb and flow of culture. He recognized that compromise does not erase the tension. It only weakens the resolve. In fact, that's worthwhile writing down. It doesn't erase the tension. It weakens our determination. Compromise doesn't erase any tension at all. We think, oh, if I give into this, I won't have tension anymore. If I give into this, I won't have the temptation anymore. If I give into this, I won't have the pressure anymore. They'll stop pressuring me. How many know it doesn't work that way? Daniel knew way better than that. That compromise doesn't erase the tension. It only weakens our determination, our resolve. If you cheat once, how many know it's easier to cheat again? If I lie today, it's easier to lie tomorrow. And sometimes you have to lie tomorrow to cover up the lie you had in the first place, right? If I smoke one cigarette today, it's easier to start smoking the second one tomorrow. If I take one drink today, it's easier to take another drink tomorrow. Isn't that how that works? It's easier to say no up front, I'm not doing it, than it is to say no later on. It gets harder. It happens so often. Once you cross certain lines, it's just that much harder, that much closer to the brink of disaster, that much closer to being on the other side of the guardrail. Once you compromise, it's just that much easier to do it a second time. There are so many lines that once you and I cross them, the tension doesn't go away. It's just that our determination is lessened and lessened. And Daniel saw this, and he realized, oh man, they changed my clothes, they changed my name, they've changed my habits, they changed my schedule. I know where this is going. I know what's going to happen. One day I'm going to wake up completely abandoning all that I thought was good and knew was good and right and held dear. And so Daniel decided to do something. To find out what he did, we're going to talk about it next week. So next week we'll get back and finish this up in Daniel chapter 1. Let me pray. Father God,